organizing course flow for maximum retention. As Sarah continued developing her course, she felt confident she had everything she needed. Her learning objectives were clear, her course materials were current, and her student workbook had been completely redesigned. She proudly handed the finished outline to David. He carefully reviewed each page before asking a simple question. "Why are you teaching contracts before agency?" Sarah looked surprised. "I wanted to teach the most interesting topic first." David smiled. Interesting doesn't always mean effective. He picked up a puzzle from his desk and scattered the pieces across the table. Imagine asking someone to put this puzzle together without showing them the picture first. They might eventually finish it, but it would take much longer because they don't understand how the pieces fit together. He paused. That's exactly what happens when instructors present information out of sequence. Sarah suddenly realized that every lesson she had created made sense on its own, but together they didn't tell a complete story. Great courses don't simply present information, they guide students through a learning journey. Every lesson should prepare students for the one that follows. As instructors, it's easy to assume students already understand concepts we've taught previously. But adult learners retain information much more effectively when new material builds naturally upon what they already know. When topics are presented in a logical order, students spend less time trying to connect the pieces and more time understanding how everything works together. Think about how a new Arizona real estate licensee learns the business. Before writing a purchase contract, they first need to understand agency relationships. Before discussing disclosures, they need to understand fiduciary duties. Before analyzing legal case studies, they need a solid understanding of the statutes and rules that govern the profession. Each lesson becomes the foundation for the next. The same principle applies to every course you teach. David encouraged Sarah to stop thinking about individual lessons and begin thinking about the entire student experience. When students leave today, he asked, will tomorrow's lesson feel like the next chapter of the same book? That question changed the way she designed every course. She began looking for opportunities to connect each lesson to the one before it. At the beginning of every section, she briefly reviewed the concepts students had already learned. Before introducing a new topic, she explained why it mattered and how it connected to previous discussions. By the end of each lesson, students could clearly see how every concept fit into the larger picture. Those transitions became just as important as the lessons themselves. Students rarely struggle because individual topics are difficult. More often, they struggle because information arrives faster than they can organize it. This is known as cognitive overload. When instructors introduce too many new concepts at once or rapidly shift between unrelated topics, students become overwhelmed and retention begins to decline. Experienced instructors recognize the signs. Students stop asking questions. Participation decreases. Faces become blank. At that point, adding more information rarely helps. Instead, it's often more effective to pause, review the previous concept, answer questions, and allow students to connect what they've already learned before moving forward. Sarah began incorporating short review opportunities throughout her presentations. Instead of waiting until the end of the chapter, she would pause after a major concept and ask the class to summarize what they had just learned. Sometimes she presented a short scenario. Other times she asked students to explain a concept to a partner or identify how the new material connected to the previous lesson. These brief reviews required only a few minutes, yet they dramatically improved classroom participation and long-term retention. She also became more intentional about pacing. Early in her teaching career, she believed that finishing every slide was the measure of the successful class. Now she understood that successful instruction wasn't measured by how much content she covered. It was measured by how much content students actually retained. Slowing down to reinforce an important concept often produced better learning outcomes than rushing to complete the presentation. At the end of each chapter, Sarah added a brief summary highlighting the most important ideas. Rather than introducing new information, these summaries reminded students of the key concepts they would need as the course continued. By the time students reached the assessment, they weren't trying to remember isolated facts. They were reviewing a connected series of lessons that built naturally from beginning to end. As Sarah prepared for her next class, she realized something had changed. She was no longer building individual presentations. She was building an educational experience. David smiled as he looked over her revised outline. Your students won't remember every story you tell, he said, but they'll remember how clearly everything fit together. That's the goal of exceptional course design. Every lesson should connect to the next. Every concept should build upon the last. and every student should leave feeling that learning was organized, purposeful, and easy to follow. When instructors thoughtfully organize the flow of a course, they do far more than improve retention. They build confidence, reduce frustration, and create learning experiences students remember long after the class has ended. Instructor tip: as you prepare each lesson, ask yourself, if I were taking this course for the first time, would this topic naturally make sense here? If the answer is no, consider adjusting the sequence. A well-organized course often teaches itself. Question 1. Why is organizing course content in a logical sequence important for adult learners? Answer: adult learners retain information more effectively when new concepts build upon previous knowledge. A logical sequence reduces confusion, improves understanding, and helps students connect ideas throughout the course rather than viewing each lesson as a separate topic. Question 2. What is cognitive overload, and how can instructors help prevent it? Answer: cognitive overload occurs when students receive more information than they can effectively process. Instructors can reduce overload by pacing lessons appropriately, reviewing key concepts regularly, creating smooth transitions, and allowing time for discussion and reflection before introducing additional material. Question 3. How do chapter summaries and review activities improve learning? Answer: regular reviews reinforce important concepts, strengthen long-term memory, and help students recognize how individual lessons connect to the overall course. They also prepare students for assessments by revisiting the most important learning objectives.